my souvenirs are really about this big family, being surrounded by my aunts, being surrounded with my cousins, and going to this place knowing that it is a place that is very important for the family. It's a place of origin. But at the same time, we're not totally conscious of the fact that it's a place that we actually don't belong to anymore, but still we feel like we belong because we swim in the lake and we go back, but the family house doesn't exist. There's no Palestinians anymore in Tiberias. So it's kind of a mixed feeling, but I think when I was young, for me, it was really, really a place of family and love, and it's really the water symbolized this fluidity at the time of being a child that was surrounded by love.
Welcome to Locarno Meets, a movie podcast brought to you by UBS from the Locarno Film Festival. Lina Sualem is a documentary filmmaker behind the brilliant Bye Bye Tiberias. This is a film where she follows her own mother back to their family home and where she uncovers the effects of Palestinian displacement on their family tree. Lina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So you're here at Locarno to be on the jury, but if it's okay, I want to talk about Bye Bye Tiberias, your last film.
Yeah.
Your film before that, There Algeria, was about your paternal grandparents, and this tells the story of your mother's side of the family. What is it that draws you to telling familial stories?
There Algeria was very spontaneous, and I think it's also the need to visibilize stories of people that have been marginalized. And it happens that my families come from stories that have been marginalized and are still marginalized and or erased even today when we think of the Palestinian story. And I always felt I had this mission, this urge to give visibility to people that never had a chance to tell their stories. And I had the privilege of having access to these people as they were people of my family. And I think also for me, family and cinema has always been very intermingled. Both my parents are actors. They transmitted the Algerian and the Palestinian culture to me, as well as the cinematic culture and world to me. So There Algeria was spontaneous, but it's as if I was at this moment reuniting all the worlds that were composing me. And my interest for cinema, and at the same time, contemporary subjects that are political, such as the effect of colonialism over several generations, and specifically in this case, French colonialism in Algeria, and how these stories are transmitted from a generation to another, how we inherit from these stories, and how we have to find our place in society. And we have to tell our story, because if we don't do it, the story is written without us. So it's our duty and our mission to allow our stories to exist in the big story.
And so I can see how your families, in a way, open a door to be able to tell these stories. But I imagine they also complicate them as well. For a lot of people, the idea of, thinking or talking to their family is very stressful, let alone working with them and helping them kind of deal with traumatic events. Has it given you emotional as well as professional challenges?
There was a lot of emotional challenges, but I wouldn't say that it was complicated, because I always felt that I did these two films because I knew that there was a lot of love in both my families, and that I could. If I couldn't do these films in a love relationship, I wouldn't have done them. I wouldn't have done them if there was an obstacle, if they didn't want to, if there were to be confrontation. This is something that I really wasn't looking for, and I wouldn't have had the strength to be in this position. For my Algerian grandparents, I knew that, I was always very close to my grandmother. My grandfather was very silent, but my presence and the presence of the camera didn't bother him. It was more speaking that bothered him. And this was the same with or without camera, and he ended up opening up. And in in Bye Bye Tiberias, my family also was used to seeing cameras, because my father was filming a lot in the 90s, so I knew that it wasn't a shock for them to see someone arrive with a camera. What was more complicated for me was to film actually my mother. Not because she's my mother, but because she's an actress, and an actress in fiction films. So it was hard for her to be in front of a documentary camera, actually.
Well, your mother is, of course, Hayam Abbas, a very celebrated actor. And that was something I was wondering about. If the 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 power flip from going mother daughter to director subject, if that was complicated.
That was very complicated. I think that was the most complicated because it was hard for me to address myself to my mother as a director and not as the daughter. It was hard for her to share to me as a mother because she was very conscious of the film, the camera. And so it took us quite some time to find our balance, but we eventually found it because we both knew and we both wanted this film to exist so that the memories of the women of our family can exist and can be immortalized and captured. So we both felt that we had a mission to bypass and surpass these emotional difficulties that we had so that we could tell this story. But it took a couple of months. It took a lot of conversations. It took a lot of moments where me and her thought that we were not gonna, make it,
Sure.
or we were not sure we would be at ease. And it's actually, with time, it got better.
I mean, it wouldn't take a genius to predict that was maybe going to happen. So did you start by just working in Paris before you organized any journeys anywhere?
I actually started really watching all the archives that I had. So this was the first step because my father was filming in Palestine in the 90s and I have more than 50 hours of
that much?
Historical archive from this time. So this was the starting point. And then, of course, I started filming my mother in Paris and then thinking of shooting in contemporary Galilee at the village and in my family's home. But the first months, it was really about having conversations and trying to understand exactly what I was looking for and what the archives were telling me and what I wanted to capture of the present so that I could reconnect it to the past. To start to try to redraw the line of transmission. So it's as if I had to go back in the past, come back to the present, go back to the far past, because then I started looking for more historical archives from the 30s, from the 40s, that I had to look for in different databases of historical archives like British Pathé, like Gaumont. So it was like a travel in time, and at the same time, of course, I was questioning my mother, trying to integrate her own personal story in the stories of these women and in the story of the Palestinian people in general.
Did you go into the project hoping to learn new things, or did you know, or had you heard the stories before and you just wanted to present them in a way that would work for a new audience?
I knew some of the stories, not everything. Of course, I was looking to understand and know all the details. I knew about the general things, but what I was really looking for was the emotional paths. I knew that my family was kicked out of Tiberias in 1948, but I didn't know exactly how my great-grandmother dealt with this event emotionally, having 8 children, having her eldest daughter that crossed the border and that she hadn't seen for 30 years. What did it mean for her? How did she go through this journey emotionally? What did it mean for my grandmother at 16 to have to stop her studies, live this war, walk for days without knowing at this moment that she was never going to see her hometown again? So all these questions were in my mind, and this is what I wanted to understand. What was hard is, in the process, some people disappeared, so they couldn't tell me themselves. So I had to collect all these things from my mom, from my aunts, from people of my family, and then I decided to rewrite the stories based on everything that happened, and so I could really incarnate them with emotions and the emotions that I knew or I thought they had at the time.
In the film, we often hear of villages or places or camps that no longer exist. And of course, the largest and most potent tragedy of war is the loss of human life, but history and culture are also victims of war. Is this an act of archivalism on your behalf, not just for your family, but for Palestinian people?
For me, totally, because when you film in Palestine, you never know what's going to be left of the place that you film the next day, if you're going to have access to it. We inherited from loss. All the places that my family have known don't exist anymore. They have always told us about these stories. Every time we gather in a place, there is this feeling that we might lose the place, it might be destroyed. So we always try to create new memories so that we keep on having attachment to the places. And it's as if we transform the sense of belonging. It's not only belonging to a place, it's belonging to the memory of the place, because the risk that the place disappears is real. So we need to keep on existing in the history of the place. And for me, when you start filming in Palestine, you automatically are already filming an archive, even when you film in the present. And even if you think you're going to film there the next day. Because what we see of, for example, what is happening in Gaza right now is exactly that. And I myself watched images of Gaza that my father had filmed in the 1990s, in 95. And at the time, my father was totally unconscious of the fact that he was filming a place that is today totally destroyed, with people that have been killed, with places that have been destroyed, with an archive that has been destroyed. And a lot of Palestinian archives have been destroyed. So it's also an urge to keep on creating archive so that we can continue existing and surviving to this erasure that is general. So at the same time, I never thought that the film would represent the story of Palestine. Like, for me, collective memory is made of a multitude of intimate memories, especially in the case when a country doesn't have the means to, or doesn't exist, so that it could create, a national memory, a national patrimony. So it's our duty as the component of this culture to actually tell our intimate stories so that we can enrich the collective memory.
The film, I'm not sure if it exactly opens with it, but it nearly opens with very beautiful footage of you in Tiberias, playing with your mother as a little girl. What memories did you have of Tiberias before you started this project?
It was always a place of family and summer and picnics and vacation. It was really the souvenirs of childhood is always something that we link to dreams, to naiveness, to a moment when we actually were only surrounded by love, when we had the chance, of course, to have a childhood that was not traumatic. And so my souvenirs are really about this big family, being surrounded by my aunts, being surrounded with my cousins, and going to this place knowing that it is a place that is very important for the family. It's a place of origin. But at the same time, we're not totally conscious of the fact that it's a place that we actually don't belong to anymore, but still we feel like we belong because we swim in the lake and we go back, but the family house doesn't exist. There's no Palestinians anymore in Tiberias. So it's kind of a mixed feeling, but I think when I was young, for me, it was really, really a place of family and love, and it's really the water symbolized this fluidity at the time of being a child that was surrounded by love.
Does it mean something new to you now?
I think it still means that, plus the loss, plus the tragedy, plus the fear of not being able to go again. And it means today all the, when I see images of the lake today, I automatically think of the stories of the women of my family and everything they have been through. And so I think of what my mother tells me in the lake, that she cannot believe that they had to walk all over.
It's her aunt
mountains.
And her grandmother, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. To be able to survive, and that at the time they didn't know that this walk would be a non-return.
There's incredibly moving and tragic scene in the film where your mother recounts going to see her aunt in Syria, in a refugee camp, and they spy one another, they run, they hug, and your aunt smells her to try and smell her family. It's incredibly powerful point in the film, and I assume a moment that looms